Hey geeks, welcome to another exciting episode of Rockin The Code World with dotNetDave. I'm David McCarter. I'm glad you're all here. Did you miss the show? It's been over a month since we've had a show, and I certainly have missed doing the show. So we're back, and we have another exciting guest lined up for later on this month too. So uh, this week, my special guest is Barret Blake. He's an Azure Solutions Architect, and this is show number 77. It's I was working on this week, and I was going, wow, that the 100th show is going to be here soon, and I wonder if we should do something special for the 100th show. We'll see. Hey, Jose, and anyway, let's get going because I want to give a lot of time to Barret because I want to talk about Azure, our favorite subject. And actually, my next guest will be an AWS expert. So I didn't do that on purpose, but it kind of worked out that way. So we can talk about both big cloud providers right now in the world. Okay. So I want to promote the C# Corner Code Quality Conference. This will be the third annual Code Quality Conference. The first one we had over 65,000 people watch, and I'm really excited about bringing it back for the third time. I hope you're excited. I hope you attend, but I also hope you submit a paper if you want to talk about code quality. We're accepting papers right now until around the middle of May. And so please get your Code Quality Conference sessions prepared and submit a paper, and I'll accept it probably. We'll see. We usually run out of slots, but I definitely want to have a great conference this year. And actually, I'm going to be showing a video later towards the end of the show on code quality. Again, I didn't do that on purpose, but it just seemed to work out that way because some of these videos I create for you all is because I'm frustrated about something and I want to talk about it. And so that's what I'm going to be showing at the end. So I hope you'll stick around, and welcome to everybody else who's joining the show. If you're joining the show, please let me know where you're joining from. I'm always interested. And also make sure you ask questions, right? This is your show. So to make it better, you need to ask questions of our guest. And so you get the most out of learning about Azure for this episode. All right. I want to promote my new code performance book. It's out on Amazon right now. There's the link. I hope you go check it out. I worked almost all year last year on this book, and at my current job, which I'll be talking a little bit about later, I've been using what I've learned from that book in my current job, and so. I feel if I learned something writing the book, then you'll probably learn something reading it. So I hope you go pick up a copy. All right. I've also released my Spargin dev tool, and right now it's got two major features. It searches your entire computer system for source code and quickly backs it up. I wrote that feature because, I've never used a source control program that didn't clobber my code somehow, and I hate losing my work. And so I constantly use that feature constantly throughout the day. Before I do anything with source control, I run the turbo mode, and it backs everything up I've been working on in just a few seconds. And so that's feature number one. That's the feature I use the most. The second feature is it cleans out temporary and cache files from Visual Studio, SQL Server, and lots of other programs that I find just kind of leave stuff around. And while, that takes up disk space, but I've also found out that can actually, hurt your debugging because things don't get deleted, and then new DLLs get put there. And it just, if you ever, debugging something, and all of a sudden it just isn't working and you can't figure out why, run the clean, and I almost guarantee you it'll work. And because that's when I run clean and things clear up. So that's why I put it in there. And I plan to add more features to it. So I hope you go download it, give me some feedback. I haven't gotten any feedback yet. So it's either awesome or nobody's downloading it. So I hope you go check it out. I have a new article on C# Corner about regular expressions. This one for April is the fastest way you can write regular expressions in .NET 7. So I hope you go check it out, because, regular expressions is one of those things we really never like doing. But when we do, we need to make sure that we do it the most performant way to not only, please our customers using the software, but also lower our costs in the cloud. And so I hope you go check it out. And also, I don't know about you, but I've started using ChatGPT to write my regular expressions. I've yet to meet a software engineer that likes writing regular expressions, because it's very convoluted, hard to remember, and it's hard to get it right. So ChatGPT is pretty cool. You just either tell it what you want and it writes it for me. And the regular expressions you see in the article were written by ChatGPT. And or you can give it a data set and say, find X, Y, and Z in this data set, and write a regular expression for me, and it will do that. And so far, it's worked really well for me. So I hope you go to not only check out the article, but the next time you want to write regular expressions, check out ChatGPT and then see if it works for you. It works for me. So, all right, I want to bring on Barret. Let me get his bio. Barret is a father, husband, Azure Solutions Architect, gamer, blogger, speaker, teacher, model railroader. I definitely want to talk to him about that, because that was one of my, first favorite things as a child, is model railroads. And he's a Buckeyes fan and more. He's been coding for almost 20 years. He's recently become a Microsoft MVP, so maybe we can talk to him about that too. For business applications, he also serves on the board of directors for a developer conference in Columbus, Ohio. So welcome, Barret.
Thank you. It's good to be here.
Hey. So how you doing today?
Not too bad. Not too bad. Having a great day. It's kind of funny you're talking about the regular expressions. I teach Saturday mornings. I teach part-time. And I was talking to my students this morning about regular expressions and how painful it is to do. And how nobody will ever like it. Nobody will ever understand it. So,
no.
Have something like ChatGPT that can help you do things like that. That's fantastic.
Yeah. Because I mean, I know, ChatGPT is kind of, in its infancy, and it does have issues. There are some things it's done for me, not regular expressions, but other things that I go, no.
Yeah, and played around with it a little bit. I was trying to get it to do some creative stuff. It doesn't do very good on the creative things, but stuff like that, seems like it's pretty good for that. So,
well, actually, Simon, who's the producer for this show, actually kind of said some things to me the last episode we had last month, and one of the things Simon said, which I found to be true, is if you ask ChatGPT to write you some C# code, it's going to call methods in .NET that don't exist.
Yeah. I've tried that. Yeah.
I think that's hilarious. And I've also had to train it to properly do tweet posts. So one of the things I've been doing for post on my tweets, Twitter post to promote my articles and stuff like that, I figured, well, I'll have ChatGPT write the promotion for me, right? So it's not me writing it. And I've had to tell ChatGPT multiple times, that's too big for a tweet. and ChatGPT says, oh, sorry about that. And we'll try again. And I go, that's still too long. Okay, let me try again.
Yeah, unless you pay for the blue check mark now. What does it give you? Up to 10,000 characters, I think, now, if you pay for it.
Does it? Really?
Yeah, I saw an announcement yesterday about that if you're one of the paid people, that you get up to 10,000 characters on your tweets now. I'm like, if somebody tweets something that big, I'm going to unfollow you. I'm not.
Yeah,
I don't want to see
write 10,000 characters. I mean, I think the original number was too low, right? The 146 or 140 or whatever it was. I think what we have now is fine, for Twitter, because that's what Twitter's for. It's just to put out little blurbs. It's not to, It's not to tell your family what you've been doing the last year, during Christmas time. That's what Facebook and other channels are for, not really
Yeah,
Twitter.
exactly.
So I
Yeah,
I don't I
Twitter's,
don't know what Twitter's doing.
Twitter's for the hot takes. That needs to stay
Yeah.
that way. So.
As soon as somebody comes up with a better Twitter, I'm bailing. And so far it hasn't happened, but
Not
you know,
yet. Yeah.
yeah, even this week I was going, well, maybe I should write a Twitter just for software engineers, right? And I was even talking to my friend last week. I go, man, we could do that in a weekend, right? And but then every time I think about it, I go, oh man, I do not want to do content moderation,
Yeah.
And I go, yeah, never mind.
Yeah. Exactly.
I'll let somebody else do it. So before we get into what about Azure and all these great things you want to talk about, I want to talk really quick about becoming a Microsoft MVP. So when did you become a Microsoft MVP?
So I was officially the first week of January this year.
Hmm.
So just a couple months ago.
Yeah.
It's something I've talked to a couple people in the past, or actually I had people talk to me in the past about it. I'm like, yeah, no, I don't think that's, I'm ready for that. I don't think I do enough. And I think that for me, that was the biggest struggle. And I think for a lot of people is I don't feel like I'm doing enough to be recognized as an MVP. But they eventually convinced me, like, hey, you're doing a lot of stuff. You're out there, you're speaking, you're blogging, you're posting videos and whatnot, and you really should do it. So I like, okay, finally, and I pursued it, and the whole process took about probably about 6-7 months from nomination to selection.
Yeah, it's a long process, isn't it?
It is, yeah. I mean, they'll tell you when you first get the you've been nominated email. It says, oh, well, it'll take you like 90 days. It's more like 6 months, 7 months, like that.
Yeah, it's not an easy program to get into. It's
yeah,
definitely.
So.
Yeah, and when you get into it, you keep having to work at it, right? Because I don't know if most people understand how the awards come, but when we get an MVP award, we're actually getting awarded for the previous year, right?
Yeah.
So it's actually being recognized for what we've done, right? Not what we do.
Your work over the previous 12 months, yeah.
Right.
And every year you have to renew that. So.
Right. And last month I had to complete, telling Microsoft everything I'm doing, and I had to bug Simon about numbers for the conferences and the numbers for the shows and everything, because we have to report everything to Microsoft.
Yeah.
Right. They monitor, Twitter and social media, but the other things we do, we have to tell them. They don't have any automatic way of doing that. So not yet they don't, but hopefully someday with AI, hopefully I don't have to do this anymore, because it's my least favorite thing in the program is doing this. And I always procrastinate till the last minute, even though I have a calendar event every quarter to update my MVP, I never do it.
Yeah. I put something on my calendar to do that like once a month, and I look at that, I'm like, I'll do that next week, and then I never do it. So
I do the same thing. I wait till the last minute until I literally did it the last day I was able to this year, because I hate reporting stuff like that.
You just gotta remember, when did I do that? When did I do this? Where was this?
Yeah. And that's actually why, I have to use my website to tell me when I did stuff, because everything I do is basically on my website, so I can just look at that and see everything I've been doing. It's so make sure you keep your numbers up. If you want to know numbers from this show, just reach out and I can tell you. I can ask Simon and he can give me the numbers for this show. I would wait a couple weeks because a lot of people don't watch this live, so most people will watch it. It'll be next week. So yeah. So what are you looking forward to doing in the MVP program?
I think the biggest thing for me that excites me is just being able to connect more easily with a lot of the other people in the program.
Yeah.
The other experts in the field. It's one thing to connect on Twitter or LinkedIn or whatever it is. When you reach out to people, and I've made a lot of good connections that way and gotten to know a lot of fantastic people. But when you can put that MVP flag next to your name, it gets you a lot more attention than you otherwise would. And it opens a lot more doors to talking to people and getting to know people and interacting with not just other MVPs, but companies and clients or whatever it might be. It goes a long way towards promoting yourself to be able to put that little indicator on next to your name. So, that's one of the fantastic things about it.
For me too, and when I'm a software engineer and I can reach the number 2 or 3 person in the programming department at Microsoft, that's pretty dang cool. I'm sorry, that's pretty awesome. I could just send somebody an email and they'll respond to me pretty quickly, right?
Yeah.
Or I can have them on my show, or or I can hang out with them in India. I hung out, for a whole week with Mads Torgersen, who's the architect of C# now in India, cool. and him and I spent 2 days traveling Delhi and Old Delhi by ourselves, pretty much, and getting to know each other, and that's pretty dang cool, I think, to hang around with people like that, and to have that kind of contact. Yeah, I've been doing this for almost 18 years now, but still to have that kind of contact, with people at Microsoft, is pretty powerful, and not all employers recognize that, but some do. And I'm really appreciative to have, the employers who do recognize the power of the MVP program to support me in that endeavor and not think it's unfortunately, companies think it's a deterrent, right? Because they think I'm going to be working too much on that and not enough at work. And it's, I don't know. So, maybe we'll get into model railroads later, but so what do you want to talk about?
I think, one of the things that, and obviously that I'm MVP for, but one of the things that I'm most passionate about is, the whole low code revolution stuff. It's been a trend over the last few years. There's been a lot of products that have been put out there, including, things that Microsoft has put out, but, there's been a lot of others out there that are just out there to make our lives easier. There's some things like, if this, then that. That's one of the popular ones that's been around forever. It seems like at least a decade, but being able to automate a lot of the things that we do on a daily or weekly basis, and things that in the past, for instance, 20 years ago when we were doing coding, you might, if we need to do an interaction between some other program, with the program that we're working on, it might have to take 3, 4, or 5 months to write that integration between two things. Or I can go out with Data Factory or Power Automate now, and I can do that in a day or two. The things that take me 4 or 5 months, 10 years ago. So it's just fantastic to have those opportunities to integrate things together, to be able to interconnect stuff and to do it with a couple clicks of the mouse and a few commands, and you're up and running, and it's fantastic. It's one of the things that just amazes me with the technology the way it is today, and so it's one of the things that I'm most passionate about, and that I spend most of my time speaking and blogging about, is this low code stuff. And a lot of developers who write serious code, so to speak, think, oh well, I don't need to get into. I don't need to know about that. That's for people who are just basics. People who don't need to know programming. But I completely disagree with that. It's something that's it's yet another tool in our tool belt, and it's something that we should spend a whole lot of time putting an effort on, so that we make our lives easier. So that's where I put a lot of my focus at. So.
Yeah, I definitely agree, and even I would say 15 plus years ago, I was thinking about the future of, software engineering. And I was thinking, I predicted wrong, but I predicted by this time in software engineering, we'd be writing very little code, right? It would be mostly low code solutions at this point, right? And there have been little blips of things happening, in the last 20 years or so. But I think, the work that especially, you all are doing, and I'm privy to that being an MVP, with the Power Apps and in the Power Platform that Microsoft has, it's looking very promising, right? And so I think I mentioned this on the show, but I just recently did a mentorship for a team for the Imagine Cup, and The judging was a couple weeks ago. Unfortunately, my team didn't win, but this is my third time, being part of the Imagine Cup, and one of the reasons, well, pretty much the only reason I do it is because I want to see what the young people are interested in, right? I always think it's really cool to think what, people that are teenagers or early 20s are thinking about what they want to use software to solve, right? Because it was a lot different when I started software engineering, right? And so I'm always interested in the projects that came up with, and my team had a project that used your platform. They used Power Apps for the UI. They used SharePoint for storing data and images, and I forget off the top of my head what else they use, but yeah, I mean, that I don't think that team, because I don't think my team was really that programming savvy, right? And actually, my team were 4 juniors of high school. So most of the other teams are college, but I got juniors at high school, and so they definitely didn't seem like programmers, but they had an app idea, and they were able to create a working demo, right, by just using Power Apps, and I forget. Well, they were using SharePoint as the data store, but yeah, they could do that with just clicks and present that to people who was going to give them money if they liked it enough, right?
Yeah.
And I thought that was pretty cool,
That's one of the things I love about programs like Imagine Cup and stuff. If you want to see where technology is going to go, you want to see where everything's going to be going in the next 5-10 years. You look at these programs like this, what these young people are doing, and they're always the ones that drive the innovation. It's always the youngest people that drive the innovation in technology. And so, I try to keep appraised of that kind of stuff and kind of watch that stuff. I had a chance to go to Build. I think it was like 2016 or something like that, and in person, and I got to be in a meeting where Satya Nadella came in. He wasn't CEO yet, I think, at that time. Might have just been made CEO.
Yeah.
But and he was speaking to all these teams were in a room, and he was speaking to them, and I had a chance to kind of sit in the back of the room and kind of listen in. It was just amazing to see some of the excitement and the enthusiasm that they had, and the drive and the ideas that they were coming up with were just amazing. And
yeah,
this is the future. This is where things are going. Just watch these people.
Yeah, and I have to say that the vast majority, I would say at least 90% of the projects that I presented the Imagine Cup are trying to make the world better for people, right?
Yeah.
It's not a new Twitter, it's not a new social media. Nobody presents ideas like that, right? They're all are trying to solve a real human problem, right? And mostly with the world, like either health related or clean water or things like that, right? And
exactly,
yeah, and that gives me a little bit of hope of the future of the world. If teenagers and 20 somethings, if that's what they're interested in developing, right, for applications, I think that's pretty dang cool, right?
Yeah, it's fantastic.
Yeah. So with the Power Platform, let's see. So what kind of things are people writing with the Power Platform? Like real world things, not like demo things like my students were doing. I mean, my team was doing.
So a lot of stuff, I think there's been a huge rise, especially the last couple of years, with COVID and the pandemic and people switching largely to remote work. There's been a lot of innovation in automating a lot of stuff that used to be, manual processes or would do in person. For instance, there was a company that I worked with a couple of years ago that wanted to put together some kind of process for checking up on their employees every day. How are you feeling today? Do you have any COVID symptoms or illness symptoms? And just having like this daily check-in process where they could just report it and say, hey, I'm feeling okay, or I'm working from home today, I'm working from the office today, or I'm working at this site or that site, and I just have something that we could throw together. It took me, I think, like 2 days to create the basic application and get it out to the client, and another couple of days to kind of work through some of the ideas and get it deployed out to the field. Within a week, we had an application where every one of their employees was able to check in every morning. It would send the message to their boss and send the message to HR so that they could have, that immediate feedback of people that we need to follow up with. If maybe you were not feeling great and you had you tested positive for COVID, that they would have that immediate feedback and be able to say, okay, this person 3 days ago, they worked out of the office. Who are the other people that worked out of that office? And be able to immediately reach out to them and say, hey, somebody you worked with 3 days ago has tested positive now. Maybe you should check yourself, that kind of thing. Just a lot of stuff like that in the early days of the pandemic was very popular. But even that, just people being able to look at the process, what's the stuff that I do every day, and being able to turn that into something that does it for you, or makes it a lot simpler to do that. And just the huge growth with the interconnections. For instance, Power Platform has connections to almost 1,000 different systems now that you can connect to it.
Yeah.
And be able to, and all those connections aren't perfect, but it goes a long ways towards automating a lot of those things, like I said, that would used to spend months writing those interconnections. And now you just click a few buttons and you can pull data from SharePoint and push it into Salesforce, and then move it over to SQL Server, and then over to Oracle, and then pass it back over to whatever other system, MailChimp or whatever it might be that you need to do with it. It's just amazing the kind of stuff that you can do. It's fantastic.
Yeah, I think it was last week I was, I haven't done much with my I have a survey out there about coding standards, and I also have one about finding a job, I think. And I just haven't worked on them in probably years, just because I just don't like SurveyMonkey. I always hit a wall with SurveyMonkey, either with what I wanted to do or how I want to see the data, and so, last week I was thinking, well, maybe I should just drop that and just use a Power App or something like that, where I have a little more control over, all that aspect of it, and I don't have to pay for it. Well, we get credit being an MVP, but it's relatively inexpensive, I would say, but especially for the numbers I get. And so, yeah. So, when you were talking about what you were using it on a job with, I was thinking back to, there have been a couple instances, in my recent history working at contracting jobs. You and I were talking about this. I pretty much only work on contracting jobs, and of course they always come to me and go, well, how do you think we should do this? Or sometimes I'll go to them and I go, maybe we should do this to improve blah blah blah. And there have been a couple times where I've mentioned Power Apps and I didn't get a good response. And so my question with you, working with companies, is when you do suggest something like a low code, no code solution, right? Do you get any pushback from companies going, well, it can't be that good if programmers aren't writing it, right?
I find that there's less of that now. I mean, in the early days, there was a lot of concerns around some of the way things work, and a lot of that, admittedly, there were not great implementations from the Microsoft end initially, but a lot of that's much better than it used to be.
Yeah.
But there has been some pushback. I think more often now, people kind of look at that and say, well, maybe there are concerns with the cost of that, because those things, it's usage-based cost for a lot of that kind of stuff now. So a lot of companies say that's an uncertain cost for me, which is, I think, the biggest concern nowadays, is they're not sure how much it's going to cost them on a month-to-month basis, so they can't plan for it as well as they could if they had a
same
server
thing with the cloud, right?
With the cloud, that's all part of that whole cloud thing. And it's not. I don't think it's nearly as bad as it used to be, though. I think it's improved greatly. In fact, I had somebody the other day where I had suggested doing something in, as a SQL stored procedure and doing it in their database server. And I'm like, well, why aren't you using Data Factory for it?
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, well, okay, that makes sense. Let's look at that. And then I ended up switching it over to Data Factory because it did make sense to do it there instead.
Yeah.
So I think the attitude is shifting as people become more aware of these things. And it's like with every new technology, people look at that and think, no, maybe it's more of a hobbyist thing. And it's not serious coding.
Right.
And that kind of stuff. But like everything, it takes time to shift the attitudes in the industry. And I think it's heading that direction. Especially if you look at what from Microsoft's perspective, speaking focus on that area, but everything that they're pushing nowadays is mostly in the low code space. They're pushing Power Platform, they're pushing Data Factory, they're pushing logic apps, that kind of stuff, Azure
OpenAI,
Functions.
they're pushing
OpenAI,
OpenAI now.
all this serverless stuff, all this cloud stuff they're pushing, as opposed to the legacy stuff that SQL Server and whatever it might be that would be on-prem solutions, that kind of stuff. They want to move away from that stuff.
Yeah. And I mean, Microsoft has a motive in that, right? Because they probably feel they'll make more money doing it that way, right? Instead of selling server licenses and things like that. I mean, Microsoft definitely has a motivation, but I think that motivation is also great for us, right? And I think so. Being in this career as long as I have, one of the hardest things I've always found is trying to convince somebody to do something because they think it's going to be too expensive one way, like you said, we're not sure of the costs, right?
Yeah.
But because they only look at one part of the cost, right? And that's the the delivery of the app cost, right? Basically is what they're talking about, I would say. But they're not talking about the development and maintenance of the cost, right? I mean, development and maintenance costs. So just think that thing that took you 2 days to do, if you didn't have Power Apps, let's say that took a team of 3 people a month to do, right? Just think of how expensive that is, right?
Yeah, and that's the way you got to present the argument, especially nowadays around costs. Is I could take like you say, a team and do it in 4 to 8 weeks, and how much are you paying per hour, and how much are you paying per week for those 3 developers or whatever it is. Whereas I could have one person do it in a couple of days, and then you've got a little bit of ongoing cost that would be slightly more perhaps than what you might do if you're hosting it yourself. But
sure.
In the long run, when you're comparing that cost long term, you got 12 months, 18 months, 24 months, whatever the life cycle you expect to be for that application, it's going to cost them a lot less to go with these low code solutions. And like I say, people are starting to come around. I think there's a lot less pushback than there used to be. They're starting to see that in the long term makes more sense for them.
So what are the other benefits besides cost and the speed of getting it delivered? What are some of the other benefits of low code, Power Apps and things like that?
I think some of the biggest benefits, for instance, there's a lot of built-in functionality around logging and error tracking, things like that you would have to include or write yourself if you're doing it that way.
Right.
There's all that kind of stuff that's just built in the Power Platform, built into Azure. Makes it far easier to find issues and resolve issues. The other biggest advantage is scalability. Maybe it starts small and you need to ramp it up from 10 users to 1,000 users to 1 million users. That's something with these low code platforms, for the most part, you can do quite easily and very quickly without having to do much effort at all on your part.
Right.
Most of that's handled for you. You just need to give it that bandwidth. Whereas, if you're hosting your own server, then you got to buy new servers, you got to add more servers, you got to link them together. You're talking about rewriting all kinds of stuff yourself and redoing all that you wouldn't have to do otherwise. So there's a lot of advantages to going with these serverless and low code solutions around that stuff. And then, like you say, the maintainability costs long term. You're not paying as many people to maintain your IT infrastructure. Yeah, you still need people. They still have to be able there to monitor and maintain things and keep track of the error messages and whatnot. But it's far less than you would invest if you're hosting your own servers in a data center somewhere yourself.
Oh yeah. I've worked at companies with huge data centers, like on the first floor of the building I'm in, and when they would tell me just the cost of electricity monthly, I think at one company I worked at was like $250,000 a month just on electricity, right?
Yeah.
And most of those servers do nothing during the nighttime, right? Nothing. They're just sitting there doing nothing except for maybe some maintenance stuff and data cube things, or I don't know what, but they're not doing anything during the night because our customers in America, right?
Yeah.
And so they're just blowing all that money, and you have to hire staff to monitor it. And to me, the cloud just seems like a no-brainer, right? It's,
Yeah, exactly.
And companies need to kind of get on board. And you were talking about the scalability, and whenever someone talks about that, the first thing I always think about is Comic-Con, right? Because Comic-Con is in San Diego every year. It's the big one, and I don't know what's happened recently, but I remember every year their site would go down the day it started selling tickets, every single year, right, without fail, right? And all the Comic-Con people are pissed off, and every year I would tweet, well, if they only had Azure, but that's what we're talking about. Is it's like Comic-Con, there's only one big day, traffic day of the year for them, right? Other examples are, websites going down because Oprah recommended a book or something, right?
Yeah.
And cloud-based solutions like this totally take care of that if it's configured correctly, right? And because you don't want that, you don't want to be in the news, right? And you want to deliver, stuff to your customers without any hiccups. And the cloud just seems to, it's not 100%, nothing's 100%, but at least you're going to have a lot better chance of things always working than if you host it yourself, right?
Yeah, the example recently, just a couple of months ago, the day that Taylor Swift tickets went on sale.
Yeah,
crashed
Ticketmaster.
Brought down Ticketmaster. Because they couldn't handle it. But,
no, yeah, and again, I was thinking the same thing. Going, why aren't they in the? Well, maybe they are in the cloud. I don't know, but really, they can't handle something like that. They've never had a sale like that happen, and come on, it's. I want to say to everybody, hi to everybody who's been joining. I see a lot of people joining from Tunisia and England and India, so Turkey. So welcome everybody. I'm glad everybody's here. Please make sure you post your questions for Barret about the Power Platform at Microsoft, and we'll get your questions answered. Someone said this isn't really a new thing. It's just an evolution, like third-party components, web services being consumed. Yeah. As long as these no-code, low-code components can be extended by developers to fill in the gaps. Yep, totally agree with that. Yeah.
And that's one of the fantastic things about Power Automate and logic apps and things like that is they are extendable. You can actually write C# code and use it in a Power Automate connector. You can call out to Azure Functions and run your C# and your custom code and whatever not that you want to run. So it's extensibility is one of the great things about the way that they've set these up.
Yeah.
So you really can. If something that's built in doesn't work, then you just create it yourself and add it on and go to it. So
yeah. So welcome from Iran. I don't remember anybody live being on the show from Iran. So thank you for being on the show. I hope you enjoy it. Simon, did we get hooked up to LinkedIn? Is that why we're getting all these LinkedIn things now? I didn't know we were simulcast on LinkedIn. Oh, we are in LinkedIn now. Huh, I didn't even know. No one tells me anything. So being part of this world for you, I asked about companies pushing back, but how about developers? Have you gotten any pushback from developers going, well, that's not programming, that's not real programming if you don't write it yourself and, agonize and everything over it. So have you heard anything like that too?
Surprisingly, I've gotten very little pushback from developers. I mean, before I switched to my current job, I spent the last 8-ish years as a manager over teams, and having people report to me. And so I spent part of my time managing, part of my time developing. But, being over a team of developers and introducing things like Power Automate and Data Factory and logic apps and Azure Functions and whatever it might be, I've seen very little in the way of pushback from those or people saying, well, that's not development. Obviously, you get people out on the web who will want to be snarky or whatever the term you want to use. That's not my coding. And I've been guilty of that myself to a certain extent with various things. But I think in general that it's much more. Um, there's a lot less of that than I think there would have been maybe 10 or 20 years ago if some kind of concepts like that had been introduced. It seems like the culture in the development community has changed quite a bit over the last 20 years.
Yeah.
And people are a lot more open to other technologies, other ideas, other concepts than they used to be. I mean, you still get, I think, you obviously you'll get certain people in every group. There's always going to be one or two probably that are going to want to voice their negative opinion no matter what it is. But I think in general, it's a lot better.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah. And, when I think about that, I would venture to guess that most software developers like the challenge of writing code, right? Because it can be very challenging, and it can be, very rewarding when you do figure something out that maybe no one has figured out before, right? And that definitely makes you really happy when those kind of things happen. And like I said, maybe it's because I've been doing this a long time, but I talk and write about this all the time, that I've always felt my job as a software engineer is to make someone else's workflow better in their life, whether at work or in their life in general, right? And how I get there doesn't matter to me, right? To me, the users are the most important thing to make their life better. That's what gives me real joy, is that, right?
Exactly.
And if I can use low code or whatever comes out, in 5 or 10 years from now, to deliver that in a timely manner, as cheap as possible, because that's what companies just want to do now, then that's what works, right? To me, it's like, it's almost like getting into these language wars. This language is better than the other one, and blah blah blah. And and I learned early in my career that you always use the right tool for the job, regardless of what language it is or whatever it is, right? You always use the right tool. You don't, any company that says we will only code in C#, I think that's, to me, is crazy, right?
Exactly.
C#, it doesn't do everything the best, right? It does do a lot of things.
There's a lot of
really,
stuff
really
nowadays,
good, right? But there's some things it's just not good at, right? And it was never developed to do that, right? So don't use it for that. Use something, use a more lower level language for things like that. And so that's the way I've always approached software engineering. I don't know about you.
Yeah, me too. I definitely agree with that. And it frequently reminds me of something, almost 20 years ago when I was in school. I had a professor who would always term it this way when he was talking about things like frameworks and libraries that you would include. It's like, well, why wouldn't you do that yourself if there's something, why would you use something that somebody else has written or something somebody else has created?
Right.
And he said that as software developers, we should always strive to be virtuously lazy, was the way that he put it. So if it's like authentication and security nowadays. There's so many good libraries out there.
Why would you write your own?
Why would you write your own? Because there's so many good ones and they work. It's the same thing with any libraries. One of the things I was teaching this morning, we were talking about REST interactions, and creating APIs yourself. And again, why would you write all the code yourself if there's libraries out there to make your life easier, to make your job faster and quicker? It's the same thing with low code. If there's something out there like Data Factory that can promote those interactions and transfer data and transform it as it's moving across, why would you spend 6 months writing that yourself if you can do it in a couple of weeks with Data Factory?
Yeah.
So it just baffles me that anybody would dismiss something out of hand just because it wasn't the way they've always done it.
Right. And unfortunately, I mean, companies that think that way are not going to do well, right? If you can't keep up with change, and we can cite thousands of examples that if you don't keep up with change, you're going to be gone, right? Or you're just going to be operating on the bare minimum until you finally die at some point, right? And you have to keep up with change, and you have to be in front of that change, right? And not reactive. You have to be proactive with those kind of changes, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
And even I know chat GPT, and AI is still kind of new, but I've already seen examples of this, but it's not going to be too long where we're just going to say, hey, can you write me a web service with a data backend that does blah, 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 and it will spit out the C# project for you, right? That's
exactly.
going to happen because, I was thinking about it this morning because of this topic. And I mean, just look at what we have now with source generators in .NET, right? Source generators are really helping with performance. I've been writing a lot about them recently, and my new article, on C# Corners about them too. And that is kind of, somebody else is writing the code for you, right? You're just setting an attribute or something else, and then it spits out, 500 lines of code that you didn't have to write. Right. And it does. And the code I've looked at, that is generated, especially from the generators from Microsoft, is really good code. Right. And I'm even really impressed with the regular expression code generator because of the XML documentation it writes. So when it writes a method for you, it writes a really, if you look at my article, it writes a really good description of exactly what is happening in that regular expression in English terms, right? So when you hover it over it with IntelliSense, it tells you exactly what it's doing, right?
Oh, that's fantastic.
It writes really good. I wish the rest of Microsoft code was documented this well, but at least this source generator is doing a really good job, right? And that's kind of what this whole automation thing gets into is us just coming up with solutions and then using tools like OpenAI or the Power Platform, things like that, to do the heavy lifting for us, right?
Well, and that's something even now, and they've just released, started rolling it out to these low-code platforms. As Microsoft is adding that AI integration even onto like things like Power Automate, and Logic Apps and whatnot, where you can just type in a sentence and say, okay, create me a flow in Power Automate that does X, Y, Z, and it will create the flow for you. You don't even have to do the low code yourself. It'll do the low code for you.
Yeah,
so they're making it even easier, and things like that, and like things like Copilot from GitHub, that they're rolling out to help you write your code. It's just, yeah, you're right. We're heading in the direction where we won't have to do a whole lot of coding ourselves. There'll always be a need for developers.
Yeah.
There'll always be a need to write code because AI can't do it all, and sometimes it gets stuff wrong. But
right.
But if it makes our life easier, if we can accomplish more in less time, then fantastic, go for it.
Yeah. And in the end, like I've already explained kind of how I look at my job, but we're solving problems, right? And right now we have to write a lot of code to solve that, but in the future we'll be writing less and less of it, right? And to me that's a good thing, right? Because hopefully that will generate better written apps, better quality, better performance, better standards, because that can just be worked into that, how that is generated, right? And you're not relying on how well this developer knows something or that developer knows something, and but it will all be a really good, well-written code base, hopefully.
Yeah, and that's the biggest debate I think about this whole AI and Chat GPT and whatnot. Is the people are saying, "Oh, it's going to take jobs. You're going to lose developer jobs." No, we're not going to lose any developer jobs because of AI. All it's going to do is make the developers that you have more productive. They'll be able to get more done. They'll be able to accomplish more, and they'll do it more effectively. And like you say, maintain better standards and better quality. With that kind of stuff than what we're accomplishing on our own. So yeah, it's not going to take anybody's job. It's just going to make our lives better. Yeah. There are going to be some idiot CEOs who say, okay, I can replace half of my developers with AI. And those are the companies.
Elon Musk, maybe.
Yeah, exactly. And you see what's happened to Twitter because of it.
Yeah, exactly.
It's a flaming mess now.
I know.
But yeah, so yeah, there's always going to be those kind of idiots out there.
Yeah,
that's going to be true no matter what. So
sure. Yeah. So I can't believe we're almost out of time already. Man, that time really flew by.
Oh yeah.
I've had a really great time talking to you. I did want to talk really quick. I did want to ask you, especially since I don't want to answer this because I'm not sure what I'm allowed to say, but what are some cool things that you can tell us that are coming from the Power Platform in the near future?
Well, I think the biggest thing that I mentioned is the AI integration
Yeah.
that I've already talked about, and that's something they've announced publicly. Just being able to roll that out and get that out there to like I say, so you just type in a sentence, describe to it what you want, and it'll create your flow for you or your logic app for you, and as a base, and then you just add on to that. But I think by far that's the thing that excites me the most about the next 6 months, as far as the things that they've talked about publicly.
Yeah, yeah, it's going to be cool, and I definitely want to have you come back on the show because I don't think we talked enough about the Power Platform and stuff, and I definitely want to
Yeah.
talk about model railroads with you.
Yeah.
Because like I said at the beginning of the show, that was one of my first loves as a child. I had train sets my entire childhood, and I was remembering that I had to do some kind of project for school. I think it was like third or fourth grade, and I decided to build this little town with model railroads, and I hauled it. My dad helped me. We hauled it into school, and that was my project. And we also have at Balboa Park here in San Diego. Balboa Park is the former location of the World's Fair. I can't remember which year that was, and but they have a huge, on the basement floor of this one museum is nothing but model railroads, right?
Yeah.
We have a really active club here in San Diego, and
Yeah,
whenever
I do, like I said, I do watch on Twitter the model railroad museum there in San Diego. The stuff that they post, and I'm like, man, I got to get out there sometime to see that, but I've never had the opportunity to get out that way. So.
Yeah, whenever I go to Balboa Park, there's two places I always visit. One is the model railroad, and I think right above it is the photography museum, and they always have a great exhibit, like by Ansel Adams or somebody like that. And they also show old restored movies there, like in their original format. Like I saw James, the guy that did The Wonderful Life. I saw the old Alfred Hitchcock movie, like in its original film format, and I think that's the coolest thing when you can see the actual film version of it, and it from however many. I saw The Wizard of Oz like that once. I thought that was pretty cool.
Yeah, we've got a couple of theaters here in Columbus that do that and show the old movies in the original formats every summer. And, growing up, my dad used to take us to a bunch of them. So it was pretty cool.
All right. Well, come to San Diego. We can hang out. Yeah,
sure thing.
Okay. Well, I definitely want to have you back on the show. So if you come up with something you want to talk about, let me know. Otherwise, I'll be hitting you up sometime in the future to come back on the show, because I definitely want to talk more about this.
Thanks, Dave. Appreciate it.
All right. Thanks so much for being on the show.
Yeah.
I hope everybody liked Barret. That went by so quick, so I guess it was a good show. You guys will have to tell me. But it was great talking about the Power Platform and just what we can do in the future, with technologies like this. And don't be afraid of using technologies. Don't go too crazy like Barret was saying. But embrace the change, right? That's you can't be a software engineer and be stuck in the past. I'm sorry. This is not going to work out very well for you. Okay. So I'm going to do another 256 seconds with dotNetDave. This time I pre-recorded it, and this is all about dictionary double lookups. So you want to play that, Simon? Of public service announcement, I want to talk about something that you all know is really important to me, and that is code quality and application quality. I've been concerned about this topic ever since I've been a software engineer, and in 2005, I released the first edition of my coding standards book. Even back then, I felt that quality should be easy, concise, and easy to implement into your projects. Even though I've been concerned about quality since I've been a software engineer, and after working with many teams and reviewing millions of lines of code, my feeling is most teams do not make this a priority. Unfortunately, this will lead to unhappy customers, and let's face it, in the end, the customers who pays your salary, right? This is why a while ago, I created a new title for myself, and I call myself now a code quality czar, because I end up doing this in most of the projects I work on because the teams that hire me have not made this a priority in their projects. Even before I gave myself this title, due to my frustration with having to deal with low quality code, I felt every team needs to have at least one person focused on quality, and which includes standards, using tools to help developers achieve the best code quality possible in the shortest amount of time. This person should be experienced and have many years of software development under their belt and been through, the software development lifecycle many times. They should have been part of delivering great, high-quality software and also delivering the opposite, so they know firsthand what happens when you don't incorporate quality into your code. I feel that most quality work just never gets done, either because of the lack of experience, or it's because of the schedule, or it's put into the technical debt bucket. In my experience, the technical debt bucket is where quality goes to die. And in my experience, the technical debt bucket really reminds me of cancer. It's going to be painful. It's going to eat up everything until the project dies or the customer leaves for a competitor. There are many ways to learn code quality. For example, you can read blogs, including mine, dotNetTips.com, and others. You can read my books or other books, but all of my code books are wrapped around the idea of code quality and performance. You can listen to Rockin The Code World with dotNetDave or others. You can attend the annual C# Corner Code Quality Conference that this year we're hosting on June 2nd, and I hope you all will attend. You can learn on the job from another developer who's passionate about code quality. You can use published standards from Microsoft or my coding standards book, of course, or other things you find online. You can learn at conferences, but in my experience, most conferences, especially the big paid ones, have either no sessions on code quality or very few. So my advice is to seek out the community-run conferences, because those are run by developers just like you and me, and they understand the importance of code quality and performance and these kind of skills that you'll take throughout your entire career. Just as important as learning code quality is ensuring that's part of every sprint or the beginning of every project. That needs to be built in from the very beginning. Because when you try to build it in later at the end of the project or years later, it becomes very frustrating and can be very time consuming. At my current contract, I feel my boss realizes that projects that make up the solutions I work on have major quality and performance issues. So that's why when I joined the company 5 months ago, this is all I've been working on, is fixing code quality problems and fixing performance issues. Because in the end, as software engineers, you want happy customers because, like I said before, they pay the bills, and it also gives you job satisfaction. Because we want customers like this, and like this, and like this, but we definitely don't want customers like this. So when you go to work in the morning, get with your boss and tell them, show them this video and say, we need to have a code quality czar, or you need to hire one. Because I guarantee if you do this, your customers will be happier and you will attract more customers and you're good to keep your job. So that's the installment for code quality public service announcement. I hope you like this video. Make sure to show it to your boss, and don't forget to watch my show on Saturdays on csharpcorner.com. I'm promoting my show on my show. I thought that was kind of funny. So I hope you like that. That's the second one I've recently shown on the show. I plan to do more of these. And like I said at the beginning, these are usually because I'm frustrated about something. Oh, I did the wrong graphic for this. That other video is coming out on Monday. Oh, dang it. I did the wrong video. I did the wrong graphic. Oh, well. But you guys kind of get it, with the code quality. And like we were saying, hopefully, as technology progresses, we won't have to worry about this as much as we have to now, but right now, most of the code that is written by humans, and humans make mistakes, and they don't think about certain things, or they don't have the experience to think about certain things. And so I do hope you show this, to your management and say, we need to, if you're not, if code quality is not a #1 feature in your applications at work, I hope you'll show this and say it needs to be, because believe me, I've worked with enough teams now that hire me almost too late, and it's very costly for them, and it's really hard for me to make changes in a code base that's already in production. So that's why it needs to be done at the very beginning of the project, so not at the end or a couple years after, or 5 years after it's been released. But the cool thing is that when you do worry about these things, like when I started at this company, I think we could have maybe less than 100 concurrent users, and now we're over 2,000. So, the work works, but like I said, it should have been done a long time ago this way. All right. I don't want to forget about our friends in the Ukraine. They're still fighting this terrible war. So I hope you will, support them in any way you can until this is over. I'm really bummed out. This is continuously going on, and with no end in sight, it seems like. So please think about our friends there. Also, think about our friends in India, specifically the kids from the slums in Delhi. That's who I raised money for. These are pictures from when I visited the Voice of Slum last October, and gave them 5 computers and met the kids and Chandy and Dave, and had a really great time seeing how things are progressing there. So there's lots of ways to help. You can go to the GoFundMe page. You can scan that. You can go to voiceofslum.org and just donate directly. However you can support these kids, I hope you will, because they really need our support. And as software engineers, we have the ability to help them. So I hope you will. All right. Thanks for watching. On the 22nd, I'll have Isaac Levine, and he's a .NET developer advocate at Amazon Web Services. So we talked about Azure this episode. So the next episode, we're going to be talking about AWS. And so I hope you'll join us for that. Also, if I'm going to be doing this tomorrow, I hope you go down to your local blood bank this weekend and donate blood. I know my blood bank in San Diego is in a shortage, and I bet that the blood bank in your area is too. And so I hope you will go donate blood. It takes me 2 hours, but it will take you like half an hour. So, and it makes you feel good about helping your fellow human. And if you do it on the weekend, you can get out of yard work for 24 hours, because you're not allowed to do any physical activity after that for 24 hours. So it's kind of your excuse to hang out in your man cave and watch sports or whatever you like to do on the weekends, or code, right? I'm talking to coders. Sorry about that. Sit in your man cave and code on the weekend. All right. Please don't forget to email suggestions, including guests you want to be on the show, to Rockin The Code World at csharpcorner.com. I want to hear from you. I checked my email this morning, and I don't get any email. So send me some email. Just say hi, or how you like the show, or who do you want to be on the show. Please feel free. And with that, I'll see you on April 22nd.